Beers with Chad.
Hey everybody, what is up? Chad Wesley Smith here doing another episode of Beers with Chad. But on this fine afternoon, I just have a glass of Buffalo Trace Bourbon on the rocks. So today, I'm going to be doing something a little bit new. I'm going to be doing kind of a book review, recap, analysis. But before we get into that, I want to thank Purple Mattresses, designing all these technologically advanced mattresses. They are supporting the Jug Life and Beers with Chad this week. You can get a free set of sheets and a free mattress protector when you visit purple.com/juglife. If you haven't checked out this week's Jug Life episode already, it is a fantastic one with Josh Bryant. Josh coached me in 2011 for my second and third powerlifting meets ever. Contacted me after my first meet, and we had never met but kind of knew of each other through his brother Noah Bryant, who was a shot putter, and reached out to me and offered me some help. And it was really a helpful, eye-opening experience for me. I'll never forget the first program that he sent to me was I think it was 585 for 3 in work up to that in the deadlift, then back down to 495 for 6 sets of 4 with 1 minute rest. Then I did a couple sets of 6 deficit deadlifts, 5 sets of 8 barbell rows, 5 sets of 10 GHRs, 3 sets of 15 barbell shrugs, 3 sets of 5 chin-ups, 3 sets of 15 back raises, and then some weighted sit-ups. And I remember looking at that workout the first day that he sent it to me, thinking that this guy must be out of his mind. There's no way that someone can do this and actually survive and ever recover. But I did it, and then I did more, and I did even more the next week, up to 10 sets of 4 on the back down sets. And not only did I survive, but I thrived, and Josh really opened my eyes up to what it meant to truly work hard. So big thanks to him. Check out that episode of the Jug Life. I had a strength history minute with Jeff Capes. Jeff Capes was a champion shot putter, world's strongest man multiple times, and multiple time World Highland Games champion as well. So head over and check that out. And the whole Strength History Minute playlist. We'll also be having a calves hypertrophy guide with Dr. Mike, and that for now is going to conclude our hypertrophy guide series. There may be sometime in the future, once Mike gets the volume landmarks sorted out for neck and forearms. And once those are done, really every part of the body that you can hypertrophy will be covered. So make sure to check those out. And then we conclude our Clean Pillars series with Clean Pillar number 5. So go watch that with Max Ada and Alyssa Ritchie. And then next week we'll be kicking off Jerk Pillars series. So the book I'm going to talk about today is The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. Just finished that up a couple days ago. I'm an audiobook guy myself. I just can't really focus on reading the text in front of me that much, but driving around in the car, running errands, cooking breakfast, whatever it is, have the audiobook on. So I'm going to start sharing those with you as I pull out points from these different books that I think can be useful to you all as you try and improve as lifters and coaches and just people. So The Talent Code is a great book detailing the process of developing skill and acquiring mastery. And the author Daniel Coyle talks about that at both a cellular level, what is happening with brain impulses and myelin and all that stuff, as well as looking at the practice habits of successful people and successful coaches, how they are getting the best out of their athletes, students, and he's covering all kind of bases from, probably most in depth talking about a Meadowmount music school up in upstate New York, a Russian tennis academy, Brazilian soccer, a lot of different musicians, a singing coach down in Texas, and a lot of great stuff. So it gives a diverse perspective. And there are 3 really important lessons that I took away from that I think can be useful to you. The first one is the effect of buy-in. And in it, he talks about the study that they did with, I think it was violin players or maybe cellists, little kids, and they began it with little kids, and it was sort of a longitudinal study. And one of the first things they did was ask the kids, how long do you think you're going to play the cello? And with one answer being like a few months, another one maybe till the end of school, so maybe a 3 to 5 year mark, and then the other option was for my whole life. And those kids who chose, even before really beginning to learn how to play the cello, indicated that they expected to play it for their entire life, became much more successful even in the short run as cellists than the other kids. And they had a few different practice landmarks, like 30 minutes a week, 60 minutes a week, and 90 minutes a week. And even kids who had indicated that they thought they would play the cello their entire life, even if they were only practicing 30 minutes a week, were outperforming kids who were practicing 90 minutes a week but had not shown that same long-term commitment to their craft, or even the same expectation of long-term commitment to their craft. So I think what that really does is it perfectly encapsulates the idea of process orientation. That these little 5, 6-year-old kids were indicating that they were expecting the process of learning how to play the cello and mastering the cello to be part of their entire lives. They didn't just set a short-term goal of, I want to learn how to play this song and then I'm over it, then I'm done with the cello. But they committed to the process of learning, of struggling, and of eventually hopefully mastering that craft. And I think as lifters and coaches, that same thing can be so important. That it's not just picking, I want to lift, I want to squat this much weight, or I want to win this meet. Because once that achievement happens, where do you go from there? Yes, of course, some people will then make another goal beyond that, but those people who are making that another goal beyond that probably had in the back of their head the whole time a bigger goal anyways. But you can run into issues with people who just make that kind of short-term commitment to lift a certain weight or win a certain meet, and once that happens, their motivation tends to wane, and maybe they give up on the whole thing. So commit to the process, commit to the idea of becoming a better lifter, a better athlete, not just a singular tangible goal. Even though those can be part of the process, understand it as part of the bigger picture, the bigger process, and embrace that. The next big takeaway from the Talent Code by Daniel Coyle was how experts practice. And this was probably the majority of the book about this concept in many different forms. And what it kind of all boiled down to was this concept of creating a strategy for practice and then testing a skill, so practicing it, analyzing its success, retesting it with the things that they learned from that first analysis, reanalyzing it, and so on and so forth with that process. That people were tending to practice almost in small chunks or parts of the whole, and then seeing how they performed at that small part, and then tried to extend that part a little bit, and then tried to extend that part a little bit, and tried to extend that part a little bit, and through that process, we're becoming hugely successful. So how can that relate to you as a lifter or as a coach? Are you just doing, the other part is that this was all part of attentive repetition and the concept of a deep practice. Not just kind of going through the motions, not just getting the hours in. And he does reference the 10,000 hour rule in it. And the 10,000 hour rule, I personally think it's kind of a cool pop example, but is really flawed in the notion that it is a retroactive look at people who became masters in the violin specifically is where it came from. And what they did were find master violinists and ask them, how much did you practice to become a master? And 10,000 hours became about the average of it, but obviously that discounts the idea that there were people who started and quit. There's people who started and kept playing and never became masters, or maybe 50,000 hours into things and still aren't masters. So the 10,000 hours is, it's kind of a cute thing to say, but it's probably not that accurate, but even within that concept, it necessitates 10,000 hours of deep directed practice. So that's what we should strive to have as lifters, is not just going through the sets and reps and going through the motions, but are you just doing the reps, or are you practicing your craft? Do you have something that you're intently focused on during every single rep? And I think that finding that weight that you can have really useful practice at is hugely important. So whether that's a technical session, and this is something that I implement in peaking blocks often, is a technical session, because I can't handle overloading 90% plus weights that many times per week, but I can't just train the lift one time per week either and expect my technical prowess to improve. So I need to have these lighter technical sessions. And when I prescribe that for people, I advocate for them to find the lightest weight that they can feel their technique at. I'm sure all of you have felt this. If you're going through 135, 225, whatever the weight may be for you, a very light weight, you can't necessarily tell if you did it well or not well. It's too light to truly feel it. So you could just do the reps then, but you can't tell if you're improving your technique. So you want to find that weight where it's heavy enough that you can feel if you're doing it right or wrong, but it's not so heavy that your mind is just going to, oh my God, can I lift this weight? Or that it's too fatiguing in the context of the peaking block. And that's even why through the course of regular training, that about 65 to 85% load is really going to be the sweet spot, because it's heavy enough to elicit adaptations, but not so heavy that you're just focused on, oh my God, can I make this lift, and having to get so fired up to do it, but that you can actually think about what you're doing a little bit, and then when you've thought about it so much in practice and had all that quality, deep directed practice, that when you go to competition, you can then shut your brain off and just let your technique happen as the way that you've practiced it. And then the third takeaway from the book that I want to share with you today is the concept of effective cueing. And as he interviewed all these different coaches and sort of analyzed what they had done, whether they were singing coaches or violin teacher, singing teachers, violin teachers, sport coaches, what they had in common was a great ability to analyze their athletes' needs and then find effective cueing to help those athletes improve. And one that I really liked was he talked with Tom Martinez, who is this sort of quarterback guru in Northern California. Is credited as Tom Brady's real mentor in the position, as well as working with a lot of other guys. Unfortunately, a lot of the example was focused on him working with Jamarcus Russell, which didn't work out too well. But he still had a good takeaway here, and in the example, he was coaching athletes through a three-step drop drill, and these were high school quarterbacks, and he was giving cues like, the ball's on fire, you got to get it out. Keep the ball high like an airplane taking off. You're like a waiter, keep the ball up, deliver it, and then the ball goes from your butt to your armpit. And then Daniel Coyle analyzed these cues as 4 different types. A tactile cue, the ball is on fire. An image cue, the ball is like an airplane taking off. A personification cue, you're like a waiter, deliver it. And then a physical cue, ball goes from butt to armpit. So how can we create better cues from lifters using these same style of cues? So ones that I use that would fit into this would be a tactile cue. Screw your feet into the floor. Feel that twisting of the feet into the floor. An image cue, protect your armpits. That's a cue that we use to help lifters engage their lats off the floor in the deadlift. I was having a hard time coming up with a personification cue as I got this talk ready. So we'll just skip over that onto the physical cue. But if you have a good personification, one that comes to mind, write it in the comments, send it over to me. Or a physical cue, like push your big toe into the ground, directly telling them what to do. So it's important to remember that with any cue, that the cue is a relationship between athlete and coach, or coach and athlete, that they have to understand what you're talking about. You can't just throw out these words and expect them to react the way you're looking for. So make sure that you're communicating with your athletes, that your athletes are communicating to you, that they understand what you're saying, that to take something from our favorite coach, Jack Clark, that you're establishing a common glossary with those athletes. So those are 3 big takeaways I had from The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. So that is the effect of buy-in, really buying into the process and embracing that, how experts practice through creating a strategy for practice, testing and analyzing how that strategy is working through deep practice, not just doing the reps, not just going through the motion, but making sure you're getting something out of every second of the practice. And then finally, effective cueing. So hopefully you enjoyed that talk. I'm gonna be doing this with other books as I finish them up and take notes and pull out a couple gems for you guys to look for. Make sure you check out my other new podcasts. I got the Jug Life, I got Beers with Chad, and now I have the Big Ugly podcast, which obviously the irony is not lost on me because I'm so handsome. But the Big Ugly podcast covers my other real passion beyond lifting, which are sports. I always wanted to be a sportscaster growing up, and this is kind of the way that I'm satisfying that urge. So the Big Ugly podcast, me talking football, basketball, MMA, Olympic sports, all kinds of stuff. It's got 2 episodes. You can find it right now within the Jug Life podcast feed, as well as it's now up on iTunes. So please go subscribe to that. The Big Ugly podcast. In the first episode, I talk about the possible link between Julian Edelman's performance-enhancing drug suspension from the NFL with TB12 Clinic and Alex Guerrero maybe playing a bit of a Victor Conte, Balco type of role to the Patriots, as well as Des Bryant's Twitter tirade, and one thing that I definitely think that Des got right in it, even though he's doing himself no favors in terms of getting on a new team. And then also recorded a preview of UFC 227, which included both of my jiu-jitsu coaches, Brent Littell, who has the very unique distinction of being both a no-gi black belt from 10th Planet and a black belt in the gi from Gracie Baja, and Philippe De La Monica, head professor at my school, Gracie Baja headquarters. And Philippe is also TJ Dillashaw's jiu-jitsu coach. TJ Dillashaw will be headlining UFC 227 this weekend at the Staples Center versus Cody No Love Garbrandt. I'm gonna be there in attendance, cheering him on. Excited to see Philippe cornering him there, so check that out. Big Ugly Podcast. Go subscribe on iTunes, give it a 5-star review, share it with someone who wants to hear me talk about other sports. We have the upcoming Juggernaut Performance Summit just a couple weeks away, August 19th on Long Island. Me, Max, Mike, Dr. Quinn, Dr. James, covering all the big stuff you need to know to train better, smarter, more effectively. If you're interested in online coaching for powerlifting, weightlifting, strongman, super total, or power building, visit juggernautcoaching.com, and we've got programs for every level, beginner to advanced, got it all taken care of, so go check that out. This was Beers with Chad. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Cheers, and we'll see you next week.